Hello and welcome back to Overbooked. I'm Amanda and today we're doing my March wrap-up. I was looking back and I was like, I wonder if I actually read a lot of books in March, and I felt like I didn't. I felt like I did no reading, and I actually kind of finished a lot. Not a lot, but more books than I thought I had finished. So I finished 6 books in March, and let's get into them. So the first book I finished in March, which I think probably doesn't technically count because I started reading it in February, but whatever, is The New Wilderness by Diane Cook. I have a whole book review on that book, so I will leave that down below, but a short synopsis here is The New Wilderness looks at this, like, it's kind of like a dystopian, I guess, time or place, and all of the people in essentially, like, we'll just say the United States are put into this like city, and in the city it's like terrible pollution, you can't breathe the air, children are getting sick. They do this experiment where they send 20 people to live in this like place called like the New Wilderness, or to go back into the wilderness and see if they can survive. And so we follow along this group of people in the wilderness. I thought it was a really fascinating, interesting book. I didn't and it was personal preference for me. Like, I just didn't super enjoy a lot of the characters. I liked some aspects that I didn't think the book focused on enough, and I just didn't enjoy some other aspects. So I don't know, I thought it was interesting, an interesting take, and I would recommend. I just recommended it to somebody yesterday, so I can't tell you that I wouldn't recommend it. It was definitely an interesting book, and I read it for the Stacks podcast book club, so I will link that down below if you guys haven't checked that out. My goal this year is to read every single book pick for the book club this year. So yeah, I don't know, if you are interested in that kind of stuff, check it out, but go to my review and you can get more information about the book there. The second book that I read for March was The Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill. So I read this for my work book club, and that is the only reason I did not DNF this book. I did not like this book at all. Apparently Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, so fun fact for the day for everybody. I did not like Heart-Shaped Box. So Heart-Shaped Box is this like horror / thriller book about this old like rocker dude, and he's really into collecting eclectic stuff. He likes odd things, and so one day his assistant finds this suit that's haunted, or this person is like essentially selling a ghost, and he wants to buy it, and it comes with this suit, whatever, and then he ends up actually being really haunted by this ghost, and it's real, and he can't get rid of it, and it's like this whole thing. I don't know. It was just like, I didn't like the dialogue. So keep in mind, not that I don't enjoy like an older book, I certainly do, but this book was written like 2008 or something, 2006. I can't really remember, but it was just like the dialogue was weird. Every single like woman in this book is like, either there's something wrong with her. Every single woman, female character, there's something wrong with her. She's either crazy, she's clingy, she's stupid. I did not like that. I did not enjoy that aspect of it. The like main character is just a conceited asshole, which I think is the whole point, but I just didn't super enjoy it. He wasn't even one of those characters that you love to hate. You know what I mean? You know, where you're reading a book and you're like, this character fucking sucks, but you know, I'm loving it. And it's not even like that. It's just, wow, this guy is an asshole, and I just don't want to read him anymore. So it's just I don't know. I read the audiobook, and there was some interesting aspects of the audiobook that I listened to where there was like music, like really random, I wouldn't even say rock music. It was just random, like when you would search like copyright alt metal music, and it was just like random in between random chapters. It wasn't even like significantly, like it wasn't even like telling you it was part 2 or something. It was just like, I guess we'll put music here, and it was just so random. But I listened to the audiobook at like the highest speed that I've ever done. It's like at 3 or whatever, and I just tried to get through it as fast as I could. I guess if you like horror, if you like Stephen King, give it a try. Yeah, not a lot of people from my workbook club liked it. A lot of guys in my workbook club liked it. That tells you anything. The next book that I read, so I needed to like you know, just take a breather, read something fun after that hot mess train of heart-shaped box. So I picked up The Bride Test by Helen Wong, and this is a romance book that was just beautiful. I loved this book. I loved, what was her other book? The Kiss Quotient. I loved The Kiss Quotient, so I loved The Bride Test. So The Bride Test is about our main character, whose name is escaping me, like this happens every wrap-up, but so he has autism, and he feels that he will never be able to love anybody or have anybody in his life, and he's kind of just come to that conclusion and he's okay with it. But his mom has other plans, and so she goes to, I think it's Vietnam. Yes. And so she goes to Vietnam to find him a wife, and she finds our other main character, whose name is Esme. Esme is a single mother, and she works like cleaning bathrooms, and she's just, you know, doing her thing day in and day out to like just provide for her daughter, her mom, her grandmother, and like just doing her thing. And her like just hardworking spirit is what sells her. And so she starts on this journey where she goes across to the United States to court, essentially, Kai, for 3 months for the summer. And they have the summer to like get to know each other, decide if they want to get married or not. And it was just like a fun, like sad, but like also just cute, fun romance book. I just really, really liked it. I liked the representation. I liked the like just nuances that were going on, that it wasn't just like, you know, for Esme, she was over there, you know, trying to, like, she did fall, you know, not only does she like, you know, love Kai, but now she needs to think about like her daughter and how to survive and what's best for her family. And there's just so much stuff at stake, and it's not just like, I don't think your typical romance book, like there was just so much going on, and I just really loved the characters, and it was just, I loved it. I loved it. I love The Bride Test. So if you haven't read The Bride Test, check it out. So the next book I read was Everybody Looking by Candace Ailo. I don't know if I said that right. So I read this also for the book, the Stacks Book Club, and that was our pick for March. And this is like a YA contemporary book, like written in verse, which I'm not usually a huge fan of books written in verse. I've given a couple of them a try. The one I really liked was Clap When You Land, which was also another YA book. But usually I just feel like I'm missing something. I'm not good at, and I know I just haven't practiced, but I'm not like really great at reading poetry. I'm not good at reading verse. I feel like when I'm reading it, I'm missing something. Like I'm not taking in everything. I don't think that I'm getting the full scope or whatever. I love books that like tell me the freaking sweeping tale, and you know what I mean? But this book was great. I still enjoyed it, even though it wasn't like usually what I would gravitate towards or something that I would pick up on my own. So I'm glad that Traci picked it for the stacks. So we have a main character, Ada, and she is the daughter of an immigrant father and then an African-American mother. So that's like an interesting combination, I think. And they're divorced, and so we see her like grappling with that relationship of, you know, having separate parents. But then she's also coming of age, and she just is graduating high school. So I think the book opens up with her picking up her mom to go to her high school graduation. And so she's graduating high school, and she's starting on her track to college, where she actually really gets to like come into herself and try new things and be this person that she thought that she could be. And she is very into dance, and she's never really been able to pursue that. So when she gets to college, she finally gets a taste of actually like really just being involved in something that she loves and has passion for. What I loved about this book, and is something that I like in just non-verse books, is like the back and forth in time, because I think it just gives us a great like snapshot and explanation of our character. So we have like, we'll be in present day, and then the book will go to like her in second grade, and we'll see a story that like shaped her life, and then we'll go back to the present day. And I just like love that concept in books. Like I just said, like it just really shapes out the character. So in this book, we really find out a lot of things that like happened in Ada's life that made her who she is today, and what makes her tick, or what really has like drives her, or what's really holding her back, or the reasons why she's being held back are because of this event, you know, and whatever. So I really, really loved that book. And then we see her exploring, you know, college, her like passions, figuring out what she wants to do. And then we also get a small taste, I think like the book description says like her exploring her sexuality, which I think we kind of see, but that's like the part of like poetry verse that I don't know if I got fully. Like I saw that she was like kind of thinking about it. It was in the back of her head, but I wasn't spelled out exactly, which is, for me, I need somebody to spell it out for me in big letters, but it's subtly there. And I think that also was like really just interesting to read and see our character just grow in a lot of different ways. So it was definitely interesting. If you love books written in verse, if you like YA, coming of age stories, I highly recommend. So the next book I read was Always Only You by Chloe Leese. So this is actually in a romance series, kind of. I read, what was that? Only When It's Us. So it's like this, like the Chloe Brown like romance series. It's like, you know, it's like they're sisters, but this is like the Bergman brothers kind of thing. So Only When It's Us, I read that in I think January. So this is the second book in the romance series, quote unquote. You don't have to read them in any particular order. I like doing that just because I'm a freak and I like doing things in order. But so Always Only You is actually a book I read for one of the Reading Women prompts. So I'm doing a book review for every single book that I do for that. So I'm not going to get too in depth about it, but so I read this for the prompt number 9 by a neurodivergent author. So this book is an own voices book. So there's a character who has autism and the author also is autistic. And in this book, we have Frankie, who's our main character, and she's like the social media manager for this hockey team, and she's autistic, and she's also disabled with like, I don't remember what it was, but she has to use a cane. She gets like a lot of hip pain, a lot of like just muscle pain in her legs that causes her to like sometimes need to rely on a cane. Otherwise she kind of just like, not like just like falls over, but she can't like support herself. So that was a really interesting aspect. There was a lot of like really different representations in a person. And I also thought it was good to see that because sometimes I think when you have a representation in a book, it's like this character only has one thing. She can only be one, you know, one thing. But like this, that's not like how real life works. You can be, you know, autistic and have a plethora of other issues going on. And I thought that that was really interesting to see. And so then the love interest in the book is, of course, a hockey player on the team that she's a social media manager for. And he is just cute, cute, cute. And so it's kind of like a forbidden romance kind of trope. It's like they're not allowed to date because they work together technically. And so you see how like that interesting like dynamic plays out. And it was a really fun book. It's not like, definitely not like some of my favorite books out there, but it was just a nice, fun, relaxing book to read with just everything going on, and really helps you just kind of like get out of your head for a second. And it's definitely a softer romance. It's slow burn all the way, but I will probably do a whole separate review and we'll get more into it there. Okay, and then finally, the last book I finished was technically in April, or yeah, this month, but whatever. A Terrible Thing to Waste, Environmental Racism and Its Assault on the American Mind by Harriet A. Washington. I've been reading this like all month. It's definitely a thing that you have to take your time. I feel like, I don't know if you guys can see this, the light is not great. It's definitely something you have to take your time to read and really absorb. And there's like a book I would have to like set down, and like some of the other books I had to read because I got them from my library. But it was definitely very interesting. So A Terrible Thing to Waste looks at how environmental racism has played a factor in the intelligence levels and cognitive issues facing minority groups and people of color in America. So I think a lot of times we think about environmental racism or just climate change. We think of pollution, like littering, how it's affecting our air and yada, yada, yada. But I think something that I didn't really think about this at all, is how these things affect our mind. And like, there's a lot of like pollutants and chemicals that are out there that not only cause you to become very sick, but once you become sick, you get a lot of like cognitive effects from that, and that actually lowers your IQ, can damage some of your thinking, your mentality, and overall cause the country's IQ score to lower across the board. And it was just kind of very interesting. And obviously these problems persist mainly and disproportionately more affect people of color and minority communities. They talked about the lead issue in Flint, Michigan, which I've talked about before on my channel. But they also brought up this other place, I can't remember what it was called, Anniston, Alabama. So this is like a city that was like 52% African American, and I've never heard of it, but this had like a lot of chemical pollution, and a lot of the people were sick, were dying, and their IQ scores were falling. And it was just, there's a lot of examples that happen throughout our country that Harriet Washington highlights that's happening. It's just, I don't know. It's obviously really disheartening to read. And I think one of the things, and I think I talked about this in one of my vlogs, is like a lot of chemicals that are used in the United States are not thoroughly tested, or I guess tested probably is the right word, before they're used. So their health effects are not thoroughly looked at or researched. Once they do damage, that's when they're researched, versus how in the EU, those chemicals undergo a lot of testing and checks before they're actually put to use. A lot of these chemical companies don't want to put the upfront costs of testing these chemicals, but in the end, a lot of the times they pay, triple what they would have paid for in research by, paying out damages and the research that they're required to do afterwards. So it's kind of like this weird double-edged sword that I don't understand why these companies don't see, what the true cost of not doing this research is. And obviously, what's the cost of a human life? I don't know. So this was actually a really interesting book. The reason I really wanted to read this book this month is I'm taking a class called Environmental Law and Policy. So this really fit in with a lot of the things that we're talking about. One of our required reading was the Clean Air Act. So just a lot of the things that I'm talking about in that class kind of tied back to this book. So it was really interesting to see, I don't know. And it's just, makes you think of like what's going on, what's really needed in my community, and am I affected in my community, or what's being affected in the communities around me. Yeah, it was really, really hard hitting. It was definitely a dense book to get through, which is kind of what I heard going in. But it wasn't as dense as I thought. It wasn't as hard to get through as I thought it was going to be. And I think she adds a lot of real world examples that she uses to highlight all of like the scientific things that she goes over. And so you can really wrap your head around what she's talking about. So I highly suggest this if you're interested in environmental racism or environmental justice and nonfiction. I really, really enjoyed this book. Okay, so those were my March reads, and it's a pretty good reading month. April, who the hell knows what's gonna happen? It's my last month of my class, so home stretch here. So we might have a quiet month of content, not a lot of reading, maybe not a lot of stuff going on, but I'm hoping that in May we'll pick it right back up, and we'll be around, rest assured. Please, in the comments below, let me know what you're reading this month, or what you read, what your favorite book was that you read this past month. And if you read any of the books that I talked about, or if any of them interest you, I'd love to hear. And as always, if you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. And I will see you guys next time.